the focus of our presentation here are on initiatives that are supported by the National Science Foundation, and we're going to do a little bit of finer resolution on some of the projects which are really spun out of the Advanced Technological Education Program. So I'm Tom Tubon, and along with our co-organizer for the session, Dr. Bryanne Peterson, we're pleased to have a few of our distinguished colleagues here to share information about their experiences, approaches, materials, and best practices to engage our community of broader impact professionals. This workshop's designed to provide a high-level overview of how the NSF engages the public and the industries that support science and engineering enterprise. But before I do introduce the speakers we have today, let me take a moment to introduce you to a little bit about what the NSF ATE is working towards. So the National Science Foundation ATE, or Advanced Technological Education Program, was started in 1993. Dr. Elizabeth Tellis and Dr. Gerhard Salinger started this to address the needs for the skilled technical workers in STEM. And up to speed, it's now overseen by Dr. Celeste Carter. So the NSF has multiple facets that have yielded a plethora of positive outcomes. All ATE program efforts aim to help students gain the skills they need for productive STEM technical careers and to enhance the work of educators engaged in preparing the STEM technical workforce. These ATE projects and centers work in and across STEM disciplines that are critical for the nation's economy and security. And through collaborations with employers and other education sectors and public agencies, ATE principal investigators endeavor to sustain their innovative initiatives and maximize the National Science Foundation's investments in taxpayer funds. So most ATE grantees are located at two-year colleges. The emphasis for 84% of ATE projects is on increasing diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion in STEM career technical education. And these activities have produced over 7,000 educational materials and have provided over 1,000 professional development opportunities. So these data points provide a snapshot of their efforts. In 2021, these tech areas represent the efforts of 30 NSF national centers and 303 projects and cover everything under the sun, from advanced manufacturing, ag and environment, to micro and nanotechnologies. So lastly here, to grow the economic investment in science and technology and build and maintain strong educational collaborations and partnerships, the NSF really is pushing this out there as a mainstay for their agenda for the ATE. In 2018, the NSF ATE engaged in over 490 public agency partnerships, 550 within host institutions, and 610 with other ATE projects and entities. In total, 4,770 secondary schools, community colleges, universities, they all contributed to the success of this NSF ATE program. And so in this workshop, we're going to hear from some of the leaders who are spearheading a lot of this outstanding work that engages our community, creates opportunities, and leads to growth of large-scale social impact. So these are the speakers that we have lined up for today, and we're going to kind of not rush through these, but go through these in a very ordered fashion, starting with Dr. Mary Slowinski. We'll then transition to Dr. Bryanne Peterson, and I'll do a little bit of a presentation on some of the work that I've focused in on cross-agency integration. And then we'll swing over to Dr. Dave Brown, who will present some of the innovative work on institutional transformation, and then Dr. Linnea Fletcher, who'll give an overview of one of the newest funded national centers. So at this point in time, I think I'm going to hand the reins over to Dr. Mary Slowinski with Working Partners. So Mary, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tom, and welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm going to be speaking about the project that we've been working on. Actually, it's two projects. One was a research project, and then that actually folded forward into some workshops. So let's go ahead and start with the background and kind of how it came to be. Personally, I was a program chair for 15 years in a professional development program in a community college. And for those of you that aren't familiar with that, a lot of what you do is work with industry to try and make sure that these programs are dovetailing with workforce needs. So it's kind of like it's stipulated. In the state of Washington, we're required to have an advisory committee that comes from industry and that meets twice a year. So that's my own background. I also am a curriculum designer and developer. So I've done a lot of that work, including a number of what are called DACOMs, for those of you unfamiliar, that came out of Ohio, the Ohio State University. And in that capacity and using what we call modified DACOMs, I've done a lot of meetings with a lot of industry focus groups over a variety of sectors, also usually within the ATE sectors. So as Tom on his slides noted, this is nano and micro technologies, biomanufacturing, green energy, a lot of work with green energy, advanced manufacturing, all of these different kind of emerging technologies that for the colleges to be able to really create truly matched pathways for those students to go through in a very short time. Remember that as a technical community college, frequently we only have the students for a couple years, maybe 3. And that's a lot that you have to get in. You need to be on the money. Let's just say that. You need to make sure that you're giving them the skills that they're going to need. And then other consulting that I've done across the ATE, I've done a lot of different curriculum type things, a lot of just all different types of things. And always, everywhere, you have educators looking at how can I increase the quality and efficacy of these workforce conversations and these industry connections. How can we do better at this? Because it's, let's face it, it's kind of the crux of what has to happen in order for us to be able to train people for workforce, is that we have this really, hopefully, efficient and effective way to communicate back and forth from industry to education and of course the other way. So at that point, my colleague and I, my co-PI, Rachel Bauer, and also my other co-PI at Alma C, who are both at the University of Wisconsin-Madison in a group called Internet Scout. They're kind of like half computer scientists and half librarians. So that's how you can kind of look at them. We sat down and we talked about this. We talked about the fact that people really were in the dark a little bit about how to make these connections better, how to think about these connections, et cetera. And I remember the very first time that we were at a conference, it was a PI conference, we had just received funding. We had, a table with a flyer on the table. I mean, it had been a very short time. We had no materials really. And we were shocked at how many people, we were swarmed. What do you have? Is there anything you have? Do you have anything that you can tell us? It was really interesting. It clearly showed the need. So I'm going to share my screen and just use our website that I have a brand new logo that was supposed to be ready. And I got it on Friday. It was supposed to be done, but not quite. So this is the old logo and none of you will care, but I care. Anyway, this is the Working Partners website for the actual research. And of course, we began with the concept of, okay, what could we find out? What could help? And we used the mixed methods, which is not surprising in education research. We did surveys of our own. We were lucky enough to be able to have items on the annual survey that gets distributed to the principal investigators across ATE. And that's compulsory for them to complete, which for those of you that do research know it's very rare that you get almost really close to 100% response rate. So that was fabulous. We really got some nice rich data out of that. We also did follow-up interviews and independent interviews, focus groups, and developed some mini case studies, which are still underway. We've got some up on the site, but we have more that are, as we say, in the can. So using the myth methods, we went ahead and we looked at what can we find out? What can we do? What are we trying to find? And one of the first things that we did was we went ahead and we knew we would always put it up on the web, but we wanted to have a toolkit that was usable for everyone. And one of the first things that we spent time doing was developing these partnership models. And these, of course, we developed these with full, we pulled a bunch of information from the community. We worked with them to vet that and get it down and bring it down into these models, and have vetted them, of course, multiple times since, and we'll probably vet them again because I have my own that I'd like to actually see collapse. But these were all unique, and we used a model of social interaction to see like what the agents, various agents on the model were. And these were the 8 models that we developed, and then went back and asked the community, who's using them, how are you, what are your biggest impacts with them, what are your challenges with those, and what implementation tips do you have? So we went back and we got this data from them. What's hard with the advisory board? What's the hard thing that you are struggling with? And we did that for each of the models. So all of the models have that information. You can see that some are used less, some are used more, and then this data. And this is kind of the summation of what those things were. So that was one of the things that we did. We developed the models. We put these things up, and we looked at the different implementations and challenges deeply, developed different handouts to distribute and to talk about with the community and more broadly, of course. And the challenges and the implementations weren't that difficult. Implementations, people want to talk about successes of how they've done well, and they love to talk amongst themselves and with you about the challenges they faced. What was interesting was the impacts. This was the hard one. It was really difficult. If I had a nickel, well, okay, if I had $1 for every time that I had a PI say to me, we really do want to know more about our impacts. We wish we were doing more. We would like to do more. This was kind of the thing that we kept hearing about. So one of the things that we did was we partnered with the RUCS group, who was a research and evaluation agency in Ohio. And we developed a rubric. They had already done some fundamental work on it. And then we went back and again, did a lot of vetting, did a lot of focus groups. We've done a lot of, we did face validity testing. We've actually are in the process of doing some active testing with evaluators because of course they'll give us really lots of information back. And we developed this very simple, we wanted it to be simple, but a way for folks to go in and kind of in some way quantify what they were doing with various partners and help them to both formatively and summatively assess those relationships. So we continue to use that. That's been a very popular tool. And again, it's extremely simple and we're very flexible with how people use it, but we are in the process of collecting some data on that. Of course, along the way, we've also done a few other things. We're in the process of getting a paper ready that's been accepted overseas for around workplace-based learning, which is one of the models that we had grouped together. Workplace-based learning being, it can be even job shadows, but usually internships, apprenticeships, and that such a thing. There's of course a lot of interest around this, and it's a very effective way to prepare people for jobs, obviously. So we've been working with, I've been working with Evaluate, which is for the AT community, they're the evaluation center. And we've been working on identifying, because what we found were people were using words interchangeably, what they were calling internships, others were calling fellowships, others were calling externships, some were calling apprenticeships. So it got very mishmash. So we've been doing interviews around that too, kind of trying to track down and find out a little bit more about what people are calling what, because that becomes somewhat problematic. So in all of this, one of the things that we found in some of the surveying, which kind of surprised us a little bit, was the fact that very few educators had received any training in doing these partnerships. And again, remember, a lot of states, I can't speak to how many, but I know that many states, many people that I've spoken with and have interviewed and talked with are required to partner with industry for these workforce things, required by, sometimes by state law. And even if you're not, if you're a program chair or a director of one of these programs, you just really need that information. And nobody was getting trained. What people were saying was, how do you learn this? And the answers that we got back were mostly impromptu, meet someone at a conference, talk with them about how they do it. And I was like, wow, well, there's a need. No wonders they're stacking up in lines around our table at a conference, right? Gosh, no one really knows what to do. So we just are starting now. The workshops, we're doing workshops, unfortunately virtual. Thank you, COVID. Unfortunately, there's some things that are good about it as well. But we are doing workshops now with educators, and the outcome of these is essentially to help guide the development of a strategic plan for partnerships. It's, as Rachel likes to say, it's a chance for folks to have a time out, to actually really look at what they're doing with their partnerships and kind of set their goals up and kind of understand a little bit more of what they want to do and how to go about doing it. Of course, we're drawing from the best practices that we've found and all of the data that we've collected, but there are also a rotating cast of characters that'll come through and talk to these various points. Also, we looking at it, my scholarship is in collaborative educator education. So we're also looking to make it a cohort, a very strong cohort, and have folks help each other, because the collective knowledge is it's nothing short of amazing. There's a lot of knowledge out there. People just aren't necessarily connecting with one another to share it because they're so busy and they have so many different irons in the fire. So our goal is to make it a collaborative environment where individual projects, individual educators develop very unique implementation plans, strategic plans for their partnerships that fit what their goals are. But at the same time, where there are common challenges, where there are common roadblocks, that they have a group that they can kind of turn to talk that through and get support. So that's kind of what we're doing now. We're in the middle of that, and we're just getting ready to gear up for this first one, and then we will be face-to-face after, hopefully, no more pandemics. We'll be able to go ahead and bring these things face-to-face starting next late winter, early spring. So that is me. That's Working Partners.
Mary, thank you for sharing the information with us. I do have a couple of questions for you, and maybe I can kick out a round of questions and see if anyone else out there in our participant zone has questions for you as well. Having been in this zone where you're looking at working partners and also been part of ATE and workforce development for a number of years, we're in kind of a unique space with this meeting because we're bringing in people who have a strong background in workforce development and those who have focused many resources and so much energy on the area of broader impacts. So this is a collision space for some. I'm wondering if you can share with us your perspectives of how you see the overlap there between building these partnerships and workforce development and the broader impact space.
Sure. Well, okay, first of all, I'll be, it's my best favorite thing. So I'll just say, I don't think, in my personal perspective, when you're talking about workforce development, the broader impact to me is almost inherent. Workforce development and being competitive both well, globally even, it requires that we align industry and education. To me, it's a no-brainer. It's something that has to happen, and we do it well in some places and we do it not so well in other places. I know that a lot of industry and employers oftentimes get frustrated because they don't feel that education is nimble enough, that especially in the space we're in, because we're in emerging technologies and kind of emerging jobs, if you will. And to me, the broader impact of the work that we're doing specifically with workforce is just, like I say, inherent. It's inherent to the success for our nation. It's inherent for the success of regions. It's inherent for student success, so that you actually have, there's a million success stories that you hear about students who have gone through these programs, either reskilled so that they could go to get to a true living wage job, or young people who have walked into entry-level positions that have allowed them to go straight up the food chain, if you will. And all of, so to me, the intersection may be a bit of a clash for some. To me, it's where the rubber hits the road, really. I mean, and even when you talk about four-year research institutions, you're still talking about jobs in the end. I mean, in the end, that's what we're doing in higher ed. We're helping folks advance themselves and develop themselves and their mind and their capacities and their skill sets. So to me, looking at this looking at these partnerships is kind of the base for it all. But again, I'm passionate about this, so you know.
So I think one point in being, and I've heard this echoed in many conversations that I've had, and as you know, and maybe some of the folks in the audience know, I'm also very strong in the side of workforce development here, and I encounter a lot of conversation that evolves around the idea of perspectives. So for someone coming in from, from workforce, and they're looking at broader impacts, and as Jory, if you went to Jory's session early this morning, Jory oftentimes says, it's an 11th hour activity when people think about the broader impacts that aren't engaged in that on a regular basis. So for workforce people who are working with CTE programs and such, as you said, it's inherent in the work that we do, but not a lot of us really truly embrace that, or we acknowledge that, or we recognize that. And I think that has a shift in terms of intentionality. And that, I think, can help to shape the way that we approach partnerships strategically.
Well, and I think, Tom, I think that's exactly why you see this lack of training, right? It is 11th hour. It's even 11th hour on the education side, even in the workforce groups. We know that it's something that needs to be the basis of what we do, and yet, you know what I mean? It gets lost. It's sometimes in the mix of all the many things that have to be done. And yeah, I think that, yeah, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, Mary, so I adore you. And so I'm going to ask you one of the harder questions here.
Okay.
The harder question here is, how do we make that change happen with people who are so involved and okay, well, I'm going to set up a program that's based on knowledge, skills, and abilities. I'm going to set up a program that's going to get more people in the industry. How do you engage that group of people effectively to really embrace that idea of maybe perhaps, and I'm going to borrow a term, a broader impact identity?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it is a tough question, because you're talking about identifying motivators for, and remember, you've got two sides of this coin, right? You've got the education side, and you've got the industry side. And in both cases, you're needing to really have both parties really understand the broader impact of a functional, successful relationship between those two entities. So, and I think there's a lot of desire for it. I think that's a good thing. I think the driver is employers need employees. They want right skilled workers. They want graduates coming out of these programs that are right skilled. So, and the educators want to be successful in giving their students that pathway, getting their students to those jobs. So I think there's a lot of inherent motivation in that. I think that's there, but I think creating a shared language that can actually exchange that information, I think that's the part where that's what we're hoping to do more of. Yeah, we're going to be having everyone develop individualized plans, but you can take the research out of researcher, but you can't take the whatever. I've already got a lot of different places where we're planning to collect data from the education participants and see what's working with them, and be able to turn that around and flip it to the other side, so that both sides of that conversation become more adept and more comfortable with pushing those envelopes, and in thus broadening the impact. Rather than having it be this school with this particular industry partner, have it be something that can actually be scaled and can have that broader impact.
All right, I'm waiting to see if anyone else pops questions into the chat box, but Mary, I have a ton of questions for you. I guess it's just an easier one to address to begin with. How do you go about creating those partnerships with industry? I mean, that's one of the hardest things, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Is it a cold call? How do you identify the advocates in industry with your working partnerships?
Yeah, that's the thing that I think everybody's nervous about. You have to remember, educators are not necessarily necessarily salespeople or marketers, you know, I mean, they're educators, and they bring a set of skills to that mix that are valid and usable. But cold calling industry, I think that's where most knees get knocking. I really do. I think that most educators really are, once they have a partnership, they can, you know, sustain it. They're professionals. They, you know, that's not as much of a dark place. There's different strategies for different people. I mean, what we recommend is actually, again, this gets back to the strategic plan, where you figure out, I use the analogy seats at the table. It's like, what tables do you have that you want entities to sit at? Do you want them to be in an advisory capacity? Do you want them to be reviewing your curricula? Do you want them to be generating money and equipment donations? You know, I mean, what's the purpose of these different related? Because that changes the ask. You know, if you're asking for a short-term commitment, will you come do a curriculum review for 2 days at our college and spend the whole day with us, which is an awful ask, but would you please? As opposed to, will you be a board member and stay with us for 2 to 3 years? You know, those are different asks. So identifying first what the goals are of the partnership, you know, figure out what the shape and size of the ask is, that definitely has something to do with it. But you know what it comes down to, eventually it does become a cold call. The best you can do is maybe find someone in industry, or find another educator, or maybe one of your adjuncts that have actually worked with the person, and you have a lead, just like you would a sales. But unfortunately, right or wrong, that's what it kind of gets down to, you know, and nobody really wants that. So we practice elevator pitches, and we practice, you know, creating an ask that's compelling and is detailed. And you know, I think a lot of times people are so nervous that they go at it just sort of like, oh, we know you work for this company, and would you please just come? And the asks aren't necessarily structured enough for the industry partners to feel compelled, or let's just say safe enough, right? It's like, if I say yes, what is this going to be? How much are you going to task me with? You know, I mean, we're busy too, you know? And so, yeah, so I don't think there's any one way. I think the critical thing is identifying what you're asking, why you're asking it, and the length of the relationship. I think that's really a big part of shaping how you do the ask.
And I'm going to jump in there, Mary, because I have a question that ties to that. That's one I usually get asked when I do these types of presentations, and I'd love to hear your perspective.
Okay.
People typically want to know what measures of success are for these partnerships. They want to know, how do I know if it's working? So what data do you recommend collecting, and how do you know when it's successful? How is that being measured?
That's a really great question. And it's a difficult one. And that's where the rubric, we kept it so flexible, because we kept wanting to kind of impose our thoughts on it. It was like, no, just like with the strategic planning, you know, it's got to be something that's unique and that's meaningful to the actual, you know, project, the partnerships. You know, and originally when we used to talk to folks, they would talk a lot about quantity. You know, it was like, well, we have 22 people on our advisory committee. Okay, but how many really show up? You know, how many really provide input? You know, how many give you feedback? How many are active? So I think, again, not to try to dodge a bullet or anything, but again, it's one of these things where we're suggesting that in the work that we're doing with educators now, we're suggesting that's part of that planning, that you create the metrics that make sense to you, and you put those into the mix, and you do formative assessment with your partners. Like, you check in with them. Ann B. Healer, who has a model called the BUILT, which is a very effective form of an advisory committee. She always says, find out what's in it for them. And I think that that's a really important part. You find out what the industry partner's there for. Are they there because they just want to give back? Are they there because they're really interested in this particular, are they passionate about helping students? Are they, you know, and then you can kind of tailor where you're going to plug them in. Then the metric becomes different. I mean, if you're looking for donations, the metric's fairly straightforward. You know, are they donating? What did you get from them? But if you're talking about something, for example, maybe sponsored research, which is a very difficult one for community and technical colleges sometimes to pull off, maybe just one. You know, if you can get one good partner where you've got one good project running through your labs when your lab is dark, boy, that might be all you need. So again, not to sound, I'm really not trying to be vague, but I think that it really comes down to establishing what it is you're trying to do, and figure out what the metrics are for you. Those can be shared or not shared with your partner, depending on the relationship with that partner. I think sometimes it can make for an excellent conversation though, you know, to be able to say, hey, here are the things that you thought you wanted to be doing, and it seems like these are what you are doing. You know, what should we realign? So
Mary, I want to say thank you for your time and sharing your expertise in your session. I'm going to avalanche your inbox because I'm sure that there are going to be a number of other questions that pop up, you know, whether you're in the process of preparing a grant or just trying to add definition to this idea of workforce development at the interface and broader impacts and so on and so forth. And so, Mary, thank you again. For people in our session, it is Working Partners, and we'll post a couple of the links to the resources and such that we're going to be sharing with you guys today. But I want to take the opportunity right now to pivot a little bit and switch our presentations over to Dr. Peterson and have her explain some of the work and present some of the work that she has been doing at this critical point as well. So thank you again, Mary. Bryanne, it's all yours.
I'm going to share my screen. I have a couple of slides that I like to go through. Today, we're going to be talking specifically about evaluation in this process. And I know the term broader impacts as someone who's in the United States, but I really want to start thinking more globally. Can somebody confirm, was it knowledge implementation that was used today? Is that what those that are Canadians are using?
Knowledge mobilization.
Mobilization. I knew
Yes.
I was close. Mobilization. Okay. So a lot of people get confused because they think evaluation is the same or is part of research. But the thing is, it's a completely separate unit for a reason. This is speaking in generalities, which I try not to do, but typically evaluation particularizes about something and research generalizes, right? Evaluation is out to improve, whereas research is trying to prove or disprove. Whereas evaluation is a basis for decision making, research is a basis for drawing conclusions. We as evaluators ask, so what? Researchers tend to ask, what so, when we have that hat on. Evaluation wants to know how well it works. Research wants to know how it works. And finally, evaluation is about what's valuable, and research is about what it is in general. So what gets tricky with this is that there needs to be a wall here. You want to have someone that can communicate between those two parts of a project, but you really need an evaluator to be someone that can be an impartial third party. And that's a step that's often forgotten about in this workforce development piece in particular, because we're so used to going it alone. There's so few of us that are in play that we wear a lot of hats. But you can't be the researcher and objectively evaluating your own work. You need that outside perspective to ask the questions, to wonder and ponder with you. And so evaluation is not meant to be adversarial, but rather a partnership that improves the research process. And so it's a cyclical, iterative relationship. So how do you know what you're doing is working is the real question with evaluation. And I always tell my people to ask 3 questions. What do you think? What do the participants think? And is there measurable growth? This is a good starting point. This is not all that there is to evaluation, but it's a good point to start becoming metacognitive and reflective. And that is the starting point when you're starting to do this on your own. So if you're doing a smaller project and you don't have the funds for an evaluator, you can do this work on your own. You just have to start separating and creating a different mindset. And these are the questions I always recommend you start with. So why do you care about these answers then is the next step, right? What does it matter? Well, the thing is, evaluation is defined as the systematic investigation of the quality of programs, projects, subprograms, subprojects, or any of the components or elements together or singly. So it's about decision-making, right? Judgments, conclusions, findings, all of these things as they lead to improvement or accountability in the programs and systems. So it's not, did this implementation work, right? It's about how the implementation may have worked, how it could have been improved, what might have affected those outcomes. It's all of the messy work that you think about so that you can improve and iterate that process next time. There's formative and summative evaluations here that we're talking about. But ultimately, evaluation's about how we're contributing to organizational or social value. And I think that's something that sometimes get lost. And that's a big part of why evaluation is so vital to broader impacts and knowledge implementation. Nope, not implementation, mobilization. I'm going to keep going back. I'm going to learn that word today, that term. Okay, so traditional evaluation counts people, surveys attendees and participants, does interviews or talks, observations of events, right? Scores, very easy to measure things. This is not the only form of evaluation, but this is where you start. When you get into some really cool things like what I get to do, I use things like accelerometers to measure when people are stopping and how long they're staying at tables at science festivals, right? Or I use Legos to pull information where people contribute to a Lego tower to share their thoughts on an event or on a program so that we can get those that are traditionally less represented or unwilling to speak to still get their feedback. There's all sorts of fun things that you can do with evaluation, but until you're ready to go there, I always recommend starting simple. So let's talk about some best practices for an evaluation plan. Evaluation planning includes these 5 things, right? What are your goals? What are your questions? What tools do you have at your disposal? How do you plan to collect data? And how do you plan to analyze data? So we're going to talk through these 5 things to get started, except when you duplicate your slides. Okay, so goals. Goals provide the foundation for the evaluation, right? This is really where you want to start. Some examples that I like to use is, you want to support mastery for math and chemistry 102. You want to ensure 100% mastery of workplace readiness skills that have been defined by your institution. You may want to increase the number of females graduating your class or just in the class, right? Or you want students that are interested in a certification to take and pass the NOCTI exam. These are all examples of goals. The important part is that they be SMART goals, right? And we all know specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. So when we're thinking about our goals, we want to make sure that we're aligning to those characteristics. When we're talking about questions, this is where the funnel starts, right? So we start with that goal, then we start to think about how we can get to those answers. How do we know, how do we measure whether that goal was successful or whether we were successful in that goal? So again, some examples. Does it provide hands-on learning? Are students solving real-world challenges and problems? Do they explore creative problem-solving capabilities? These are types of questions that may have to do with a specific type of goal. Your questions can't be one size fits all because your goals and your objectives are not one size fits all. Every program is different, so you have to go through this planning process as a new process each and every time you start a program or an event or prior to starting. Getting a little tongue-tied, guys. Till we're mid-afternoon here. Okay, so tools. Tools provide opportunities for data collection, right? These might be equipment use logs or exit tickets to get feedback from students. Lesson plans. This is an important one. I have that starred because a lesson plan is absolutely a place to collect data because it tells what you intended to do. So then with that, if you do a collection like a diary, let's say, from the teacher, they can talk about how things didn't go or how they did or why they changed it. And then you can use that in that iterative reflective process. Interviews, surveys, after action reports, reflections. This is by no means an inclusive list. It is just a starting point for you guys to be thinking about. With data collection, the first thing I always say is ask yourself, do the tools I have planned provide the right data to answer my questions? So it's an alignment issue, right? You've gotten your questions, you've gotten your tools. Do they match up? Are there any gaps? If so, what will you use to fill those gaps? So you really have to be intentional here. It's not something that you can do on the fly or while you're in the midst of the project effectively. You want to have this all laid out in advance. Some other questions I like to ask: will data be collected from everyone or just a sample? Why? What's your justification for that too? How will the sample be collected? Why? What's the justification for that? So these are the questions we're constantly asking ourselves as we build these plans. And finally, when will the tools be used or provided, right? What's it look like? Now, the final step in this evaluation planning prior to the start of a project is your analysis plans. It can be as simple as or as complex as you make it. Statistical analysis, qualitative analysis, reporting, or some combination of mixed methods approach. Just like in research, your evaluation can have different components that take care of different parts of your assessment. So let's talk about a few quick tips for data. First, when you're using digital forms, which I recommend highly because it helps you collect and aggregate your data much faster, and it requires less cleaning than doing it by hand. But you need a backward plan. Don't just throw it out there, right? What do you want your data to look like? Who's your audience? How will you present it? Qualtrics is a very well-known software as a service option for research collection. It can also be used in evaluation. Similarly, SurveyMonkey. My personal favorite is Google Forms. How are you going to present it, right? Are you going to give them a link? Are you going to have them do it in class, after class, during the staff meeting? What is the answer here? And who are you doing it for? Because those forms might look different for someone who is an industry partner versus a first-year student in a community college class, right? So the language level that you're using. And finally, be careful with your sharing permissions. I'm seeing Nancy, can you see my slides now? It looks like I'm sharing, but I'm going to pause for a second because I just saw that come up in the chat. Nancy might be shy. Tom, can you see my slides?
I can see your slides. Yep.
Okay, beautiful. Yes, we will have the link, and I can actually provide that now for anybody who likes to follow along. You are welcome to add this to your drive as a resource too. I've given sharing permissions to you all for viewing rights. So you are welcome to take this and use it as you see fit. Which is funny because sharing permissions is what I just had up there, isn't it? Where did I go? Here we go. So be careful with your sharing permissions. Before I share that link, I always double check. Do I have this as viewing? Can they comment and accidentally share something or delete something that someone else might need, right? So know what data you're using, how you're collecting it, and make sure that it's shared appropriately for the person that they're at. Nest your groups and think about who needs what. Be really selective with who has access to what. Next up. Okay, so I always say mind your cues. What do I mean by that? Well, we have quantitative or numeric data, and then we have qualitative, which is a more descriptive form of data. The tricky part here is that there's an in-between with Likert scales, which we'll talk about in just a second, but I want to talk through. Numeric might be something like how many students graduated the program in 2021, right? Or what ratio of students completed the program in under 3 years. These are very strictly quantitative measures. In comparison, qualitative measures might be something like, what did you feel when you saw the new slide deck style, right? Or how did you approach the group project as someone new to the existing cohort, right? So these can be questions posed to the whole group or to a subset in either case. Like I said, Likert scales are where things get trickier because technically they're a qualitative, but they are frequently measured and statistical processes are done on them as if they are quantitative. This is where intentionality comes in again. The answer is it depends on your project and what your goals are. So I can't say you should always do it this way or that way. It's something that you need to be thoughtful and thinking about. I am happy though. I love to talk data. So I have my email address in this slide deck. I will also put it in the chat. If anybody ever had a question or didn't know how to get to an answer or didn't know how to share a piece of data with visualization or something, please email me. I love to talk it. You are not bothering me at all. There's some examples. All right, so the last thing I want to talk about is the big picture, right? When we take our research data and our teacher data and our student data and we evaluate that, which takes our critical thinking and our action pieces, that's where powerful change begins to occur. It's that iterative design, the iterative nature of evaluation is what makes it so exceptional and what really promotes growth in all parts of our work. So when we put it all together, the right data in the right format, used the right way, empowers you in any role that you're in to make informed decisions and take action that leads to your success. And that's what evaluation is about. So it's not about making your program look good. It's not just about meeting the NSF requirements. Your evaluator should be someone that understands your content explicitly when possible and wants to be a partner in that process. They shouldn't be the one collecting your research data, but they should be talking to you as you do it. They should be the one probing you, asking you questions, building out. So often I see that with ATE, especially proposals, especially with the NSF, evaluation is an afterthought. And we really need to be careful and intentional with this. Find your evaluators, come to me. If I can't do it, I can put you in touch with someone who can. I have a whole list of colleagues that specialize in different things. It's so important that your evaluator be seen as a part of your team and be a part of your planning process early on to make sure that you're getting the most out of your evaluation dollars and time. So the top 3 takeaways I want you to come away with today: iterate, 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 document with intention before, during, and after, and always choose data informed over data driven. Now, I broke my own rule here because I just introduced something in the final slide, but I like to give this as an example, right? So for those of you who may not be able to read this slide, it says, "Welcome back to school, students," on the board. And then the teacher, who's it looks like is being evaluated by an administrator, says, "Oh, sorry, kids, I forgot." And then on the second screen in this comic, she adds WB to SKOOL students. And she tells the evaluator, they spent the entire summer texting. Takes a while to wean them. So what do I mean by data informed over data driven? We need to remember that context is important, especially in evaluation, and that there's always an exception to the rule, but you have to do it with intention. With that, I'm going to hand it back over to Tom because he is going to lead us through some more questions, I'm sure. But I would love to hear from some of you all in the audience.
Bryanne, thank you so much for your presentation. I do have one question to lead into, and that is with evaluation. Okay, so I'm an educator. That's my background. I work with community colleges and CTE programs, but spent a number of years in the research world as well. So in either the research world or as an educator, there are elements of evaluation that are important, but never to the level where the amount of information you need to know to put a really solid project together is just not there. So what kind of advice would you give to people who don't have a strong background in evaluation as they are putting together their potential proposals for funding?
Collaborate, collaborate, collaborate. You don't have to do it alone. The NSF has no cap on the number of people that can be involved in a project. Find that person that has a similar interest, that does have this skill set. Network at things like the summit and find your commonalities and find those people that balance you. That's how I found Tom. And we worked well together on several projects right now. I'm learning about Mary, and now I really want to join her projects. And just become best friends with her. But, that's why I say I really want to hear from you all, because it's not just about networking to find your next job or to find your next research project to make tenure, right? It's about finding people of like minds so that you can grow together and further this industry and this mindset together to make it become normalized.
So I think that that's a good way to kind of summarize a little bit of Mary's work that she presented on working partnerships. And then it's going to lead into my section, which is going to come right next. And so in the interest of time, we're just going to keep on moving through. Bryanne, thank you very much for sharing that bit about evaluation and the importance of evaluation for our participants here today. All right, so give me just a moment and I'll share my slide set with y'all and we'll get this rolling. So I hope that by the end of my presentation here, you guys aren't so sick of hearing me talk and being the person behind all of these questions, but I do want to present a little bit of the work that I've been leading on here at the interface between workforce development and industry partnerships and education. So my background, as I alluded to in the just a moment ago, I'm at Madison Area Technical College. I work in a 2-year tech and community college, and I oversee our program for stem cells and regenerative medicine, which presented some really interesting problems. So it's a program which is funded by the National Science Foundation, Advanced Technological Education, but it's also in an area of emerging technologies, which creates that little bit of a difficult space in developing jobs and career pathways in the field where those jobs don't necessarily exist. So I'm going to present a little bit of work that I've done in support from the National Science Foundation that are focused in 4 areas. And this is all about public engagement at the intersection of the future workforce. And so in the first part, I want to show you a little bit of work with the NSF ATE program and some of the partnerships that are important for really driving what this work is producing. So this has to do with a number of different partnerships with Project Vision. We'll hear from Dave Brown in just a moment. And also the NSF National Center for Biotechnology. And we have the fortune of having Dr. Linnea Fletcher on board as well. So I'll hit up some of the work with the NSF ATE program, and then a little bit of work that overlaps with the role that I play with the ARIS Center for Advancing Research Impact in Society. And then other areas of NSF that are also very, very important, but they also represent not necessarily just the community tech colleges or K-12, but our 4-year institutions and our R1s for research impact. And this has to do with partnerships with cell manufacturing and advanced technologies for their engineering research center at Georgia Tech. And then the larger scale, which is, okay, well, we have a lot of partnerships that are going on here. And one of the major movers and shakers that the federal government has really put a lot of effort in creating are the National Network for Manufacturing Innovation Institutes. So I'm going to wrap up my presentation here with some work and partnerships with the NNMI, and we'll see how this all hopefully will come together to make a little bit more sense. So altogether, when I think about broader impacts and public engagement and workforce development, it becomes a little bit of a blender. So what I have tried to do in the last few years is really break this down to a couple of guiding principles for strategic engagement, and they're outlined here. So, you know, just in general, the basic approach is to really identify those boundary-breaking collaborations, you know, those partnerships. And how do you do this? By dismantling traditional ways of doing things that help to create that problem-solving and innovation environment. Then, of course, we want to push the idea of channeled curiosity or the integration of curiosity-driven research, strategic planning, and understand for the workforce purposes, what does the market demand? And then lastly, how do we bring this all together? So talking about orchestrated commercialization, coordinate stakeholders in the tech commercialization field with educators, industry partners, community members, and it becomes this massive, massive area of how do we actually identify who these players are, what are the impact and scope, and for this particular case scenario, I'm talking about the bioscience education and workforce development ecosystem. So this is a very, very simplified map of how, in my experience in working with EWD, education and workforce development, and educators in industry, a lot of different players come to the table. And I think it's about figuring out what each one of these different players has to offer. How do we leverage that, and how do we create something bigger from each individual part and contribution? So I have it broken down for government, education, career pathway, industry, and societal impacts. And you can see the usual players here with ARIS, with societal impacts. a number of government inputs, including policymaking and a variety of different federal agencies, career pathways in industry, our trade organizations. So everything needs to come together in order to create that perfect environment, or at least an ideal environment to create positive movement for workforce development. So what this is a works in progress to help identify and landscape and roadmap what's out there. So I'm going to focus a little bit first on some of the NSF programs in the emerging technology space. And we were very fortunate about 10 or so years ago to get funding through the NSF to create a program in cell and tissue biomanufacturing. Now, this could have been in any other area that's new and innovative, and the issues are still going to be the same. How do you create a program when you don't know the jobs that are out there? How do you actually do this? How do you map this out? And it has to do a lot with what, again, Mary was referring to with working partnerships and interaction with those industry partners to help develop something meaningful. So with the NSF support, we were able to develop a program. This was over 10 years ago. This was in stem cells and regenerative medicine. We developed a variety of different certificates and partnerships and ways that we can teach about this that had that spin on workforce development. This was integrated into the University of Wisconsin master's program. We conducted a number of outreach and engagement with our local secondary schools, industry short courses, and just a variety of different ways to think outside of the box to actually get this curriculum out there. So the short of it is that we developed this program. It was very rough in the very beginning, but by listening to our industry partners, trying to figure out what their needs are and aligning the abilities for programs like those that exist in the community college to the industries, we're able to now boast a success rate for people who complete this one semester certificate in stem cells and regenerative medicine at a placement rate of about 98% in our industries. So this is just a little bit of an overview of our working facilities, and we try to emulate that laboratory space that is oftentimes kind of the black box of what happens in industry. So a lot of our industry skills, knowledge, and abilities go into this mix, and so many countless conversations with our industry partners. This is just a timeline to give you a sense that, I just presented a picture here where there's a really high level of success, but it wasn't always that case. And it took a lot of years to actually figure out how to make this work, and a lot of conversations with industry, with our federal agencies, and so on and so forth to make this work. So going back to 2007, we did apply for a number of NSF ATE grants to create a pilot program. We rolled this into a full program development in our industry advisory board. And then in that formative period, one of the things that we saw was that, we have a really amazing program that creates opportunities for students, but yet we can't get this out to the masses. And we still have trouble with that. So, coming around 2014, one of the biggest challenges was that we have a highly successful program, but we have less than 5 programs across the United States that adopted what we were doing and brought that into their institutions for workforce development. So, there was a little bit of an issue there. A lot of effort went into this, and we were talking about how can we have that broader impact and scale out. So one of the things that this actually brought to mind was that, okay, so we developed the program. We can't really get that out there so easily. So can we actually bring people together in a different forum to get the word out? So this spurred on a next grant that we were awarded by NSF and ATE to develop a consortium for advanced manufacturing for cell and tissue-based products. So altogether, over the last few decades, we've received about $5.5 million to develop programs, not just in cell and tissue manufacturing, but at the college we've used this to really help develop our outreach and education initiatives in the biosciences. So for the consortium network, because we were having that kind of an issue with getting the information out there, we flipped the paradigm, and we asked the question, well, what do we need to do? We need to listen to our industry stakeholders a little bit more closely. So we designed a multi-year strategic initiative to map the ecosystem and to create that community to career pathway for technical education and biomanufacturing. And we pulled together over 200 regional national partnerships that represent 4 different areas of our nation: our government stakeholders, our educators, our industry members, and then our community-based organizations, which provide that front-end input. And we've worked with a number of R1 institutions, as well as not-for-profits and public-private institutions as well, that are all pursuing the same type of a outcome, which is how do we grow that workforce development piece. So a number of our partners are indicated here, but not only are there partners, they are in their own right individuals that have stellar programs funded for workforce development by the ATE. So we have Russ Reed, who's leading a project to develop skills for biomedical and emerging technology applications, and Jim DeClos, who's closing up a grant for single-use bioreactors, John McDowell at Delaware, who's working on CRISPR and technical training in gene editing, Karen Zimmerman, who's organizing her efforts around partnerships with the CIRM, or the California Institute for Regenerative Medicine, and then Dr. Sandy Porter, who is working on building those links to our future through identifying web-based resources and resources for biotech careers. So you can see that the scope of work here for NSF, at least by this example of a project, and the reach for that project is quite vast, but the world goes much farther than that. And so when we start talking about all of these partnerships, we get into a quagmire, because we're worried about partly how many partnerships are too many partnerships. What is a partnership which actually creates something versus a partnership by name? So this brought me actually to a role that I play with the ARIS Center for Strategic Partnerships, because I needed to understand this phenomenon a little bit more. So I'm with ARIS, and I also work with strategic partnerships with the idea of broadening participation. And our team at ARIS, along with Susan Reno, Jennifer Fields, and Michael Jacobson, and then former member Kevin Nemi, who set the foundation for the work that we're currently pursuing for strategic partnerships when he was leading not only parts of ARIS, but with NABI, or the National Alliance for Broader Impacts. So we're interested in engagement of workforce programs, community college programs as our CTE. How do we partner better with the NSF ATE, business and industry partnerships, and workforce advocacy agencies? These are our current works in progress, but I'll tell you that one of the outcomes really has precipitated into a meeting that we held last year. And we're interested in broadening participation of persons with disabilities in STEM disciplines. And so what the ARIS Center had done with this was we pulled together a meeting with 64 leaders that represent disability and accessibility. And we did this with right in the middle of COVID. So we had about a week and a half to 2 weeks to turn the meeting around from a face-to-face meeting that we were supposed to hold at in Boston. And we turned this around, and we held this meeting, and the outcomes were absolutely phenomenal. To make a long story short, we rolled what we learned from this meeting and from our experts in the area of disability and accessibilities into an application for an Includes grant that will help to broaden that participation even further through these partnerships. So the third piece that I want to mention here as part of this larger puzzle is partnerships with other institutions, between community colleges, between K-12, between R1 institutions. And this is a partnership which we created with Georgia Tech and University of Wisconsin-Madison, and a third partner, which is the University of Puerto Rico and Mayagüez. So the NSF Engineering Research Center for Cell Manufacturing was funded several years ago at the University or at Georgia Tech. And as part of that discussion, I was working with them at the time to figure out how they can build better connections to workforce development through skilled technical workers in the tech and community college. So we've developed collaboratively a summer research program for community and tech colleges that will help to engage those students that are going through these associate's degree for biotech programs, and partnering them with R1 institutions and laboratories to give them some really core experiences and understanding of the research environment. So this is one of the projects that students have put together, and we had 6 students that were pulled together that worked together across 3 different community colleges. So the take home from this is engaging those community college students, but the way that we did this, which I'm hoping will be institutionalized within the CMAT arena, is to have students design a company, a mock biotech company, and then play those roles as either a CEO or the manufacturing specialist, operations and quality distribution manager, assign these different roles. That's kind of a higher level point of engagement. But for our students, the larger value comes in that as they identify what these roles do, what these roles, what they're responsible for, we give them the opportunity to actually interview and engage industry, their industry counterparts, whether they're CEOs or regulatory officers. And it's been an amazing experience for these students. So this brings me back full circle. And I know I'm covering a lot of different parts that are in this ecosystem with societal impacts in government and career pathways and industry. And there's one last one that I want to address, which is the interaction with the Manufacturing Innovation Institutes. So for those of you who don't know, the Manufacturing Innovation Institutes were funded almost a decade ago in 2012, and they represent public-private partnerships. And there are 15 manufacturing innovation institutes that exist that are in that area of really promoting commercialization of products. And you can see that these span everything from biotechnology and pharmaceutical development to wearable fabrics. And so these are out there, and they are incredible resources for partnering. So my interest in the Manufacturing Innovation Institutes and expanding that sphere of influence is built on a couple of different principles, but also best practices and what I've identified as some of the things that we need to know moving forward. So with the Manufacturing Institutes and the newest one, which is BioMade, which is for synthetic biology, a couple of important things. Be aware, but not biased towards conventional approaches to education and workforce development. To be able to identify, assess, and align efforts to the needs of the industry that you're looking at. And that seems like it's a pretty simple thing, but oftentimes it's overlooked. Integrate diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in those activities for education and workforce development. And then prioritize internal and external communications, because it is about listening and acting on those important topics. So listen openly to the needs of business and industry, let them drive the progress. And then lastly, inventory, evaluate, and capitalize on those resources that already exist. So the 15th Manufacturing Innovation Institute's been funded, and with the help of Linnea Fletcher and the Innovate Bio Center, we've been able to develop a very strong partnership with that institute that will help to open up numerous doors and create more opportunities, both for researchers as well as for students and educators at the 2-year community college, high schools, as well as the 4-year R1 institutions. We are interested in working more with the BioMade and workforce development team to engage industry, to engage academia, to align those interests, and go through this list of things which you can see are part of that ecosystem for workforce development. And then finally, of course, with the ultimate impact factor of changing society in a positive way. So with that, I've covered a couple of different things for workforce development, and I know that I've gone through way lots of information, but I hope that I've been able to frame this up in a way that really brings it all back together. So with that, Bryanne, I'm going to hand it back to you. All right. Thank you all for listening to my presentation and for me to ramble on here. I'm going to switch the torch. I'm going to pass the torch here in this Olympic afternoon to Dr. Dave Brown. So Dave, if you're ready to go, the stage is yours.
Well, being ready is really kind of it depends on what you mean by ready, but I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and start a presentation. Let's put it that way. We all good, Tom? You see me okay? And the screen?
Sound and presentation is good.
Super duper. Okay, so first, I really want to thank Tom for putting together this engaging, and Bryanne, this engaging workshop. I mean, I'm resonating all over the place with some of the things that have already been said, both as they map to our own project that I'm going to describe here, and also in my own personal scholarship. There's just a lot of good stuff that's been shared already, and I know Linnea, and she'll follow up with even more engaging stuff. So what I want to tell you about is a story that has yet to experience its first anniversary. And of course, this past year has caused us to pivot a lot in what we've actually executed compared with what we proposed to do. But what we have is a grant funded, an NSF ATE grant funded project that offers mentoring, which there are quite a few ATE mentoring projects out there, all of which have their own value and specific aims. But ours, as you'll see as I develop the content here, ours brings another couple of layers that I think can help to inform other projects as well. So the way this project began is that many of us in the two-year college community, which I spent a lot of years in until I executed an early retirement just about 2 years ago. Those of us who were trying to be those movers and shakers pursuing NSF grants and driving innovation in workforce development and STEM education and other areas that NSF likes to support, one of the common challenges is to muster sufficient institutional support and administrative support, both to pursue those grants and to manage them once they've been acquired. And that's my own personal experience. I'm sure my community college colleagues on this call or in this meeting can also validate that. And then we have some survey data that point to that as being the single greatest asset to develop grant proposals and to manage grants that have been awarded. And so based on this need, we decided to, some of us who were thinking about these issues, decided to come together to put together an NSF proposal that would provide this holistic look from the outside at processes and resources and opportunities in two-year colleges that with the right alignment could lead to really good forward momentum to pursue NSF funding, and not just a one-off. I mean, I run other workshops. I've got a grant to run an STEM workshop right now that's kind of a one-off. We're helping two-year colleges prepare competitive NSF STEM proposals, and we hope they get that funded, but it's not something that, we're hoping that it will confer some sustainability in the faculty professional development that comes about from it, but we're not really working at the level that Project Vision is working to align the whole continuum of stakeholders, from board of trustees and presidents and chancellors through that whole continuum to faculty and staff and workforce partners. So we're really looking at the entire ecosystem of what it would take to align priorities and resources and capital, human capital and external capital with workforce partners to really pursue on an ongoing level, an ongoing manner, NSF funding when appropriate opportunities arise. Now, this lack of institutional support and understanding how to muster that support is particularly particularly true for small and rural two-year colleges and institutions where there may have been recent leadership changes at the top. And so our overarching goal is to work with colleges interested to develop that capacity to pursue NSF support in an ongoing manner and in a systematic and sustainable manner. And so I'm going to describe a bit how we've approached doing that. And again, with the caveat that we have yet to celebrate our first anniversary of the project. So it's very nascent. And what I'm going to show you is what we propose to do. And once we're able to travel and go visit colleges on site, it will hopefully manifest itself as we envisioned from its conception. So if you remember anything about this talk, just remember the Swiss Army knife, because this is really how we see this project. It's really these multiple tools that we think we can offer colleges that serve a variety of different purposes. So one of those is to raise awareness of NSF funding opportunities and ultimately increase the number of institutions in the ATE portfolio, or better said, the ATE family. You know, ATE has done a great job reaching community colleges across all the US states and territories, and hundreds have been reached, but there's still many hundreds that have yet to participate. And so the idea of increasing the broader impacts follows directly by increasing the number of institutions that we can bring into the ATE family. So we do that by recruiting through a variety of vehicles out there. Once we've engaged a college, we provide, again, doing an assessment to determine with them where our layers of expertise and involvement would be best applied. We provide mentoring and professional development across, as I mentioned before, that whole continuum of college personnel, from the boards and the leadership of the institution to the faculty members and staff, and even convening meetings with workforce partners. One of the things that we think sets us apart from other mentoring projects is that we spend a lot of time doing guided ideation. A lot of colleges really don't know exactly where to begin to develop ideas on how to serve the workforce. What do we do? Where do we even start with putting together an idea for offering the workforce a valuable asset by building a pathway from our institution into their companies or whatever the environment may be for entry-level technical employees? So we spend a lot of time, multiple calls, basically brainstorming, again, across the curriculum, or I'm sorry, across the continuum of stakeholders. We'll have college presidents and STEM faculty members and grant writers and a whole host of individuals on a given Zoom call to really start generating ideas and multidisciplinary and really trying to vet ideas that we also then help them to prioritize in terms of short-term, medium-term, long-term. What's really going to be the lowest hanging fruit that could be pursued in light of what resources are available. Those resources could be space in which to build a program, industry partners chomping at the bit for graduates of a program with particular skills and competencies to enter the workforce, whatever it may be. But the idea of the ideation can really bear a lot of fruit in terms of, as I mentioned, the short-term, medium-term, and long-term potential goals to develop, which then helps to breed that idea of sustainability and continuing processes for exploring potential NSF grants. So once we've come up with sort of that idea, that core first idea to pursue, and you know, Tom's initial session talking about the various sectors in which ATE supports, the possibilities are numerous. So depending on where a college may be located and what the nearby workforce partners are in their service area, the needs of those partners, that will help to drive the idea that then is chosen to pursue NSF support to develop and build a program around. And so once we've gotten that idea, then we help with developing that competitive ATE proposal. And through these processes, we're also looking at, we're taking notes and doing interviews and collecting data and information to understand how what we've engaged these colleges with is leading to transformation of the institution. How are they shifting? How are they pivoting? How are they collaborating internally in ways that they weren't doing previously, that's leading to this positive change that's going to facilitate ongoing activities to seek NSF support? So this exploration of institutional change is done via something called the ADKAR model of change management, which I'm not an expert on, but I'll share a little bit of it in just a short while. And one of the other valuable things that we think we can contribute from this project is, once we've looked at some of these different settings of colleges, the sizes of the colleges, the workforce they're serving, the various parameters and dimensions across which we're working with these different colleges, we're going to develop case studies and other content to share with communities that could use those insights that we've gained through these change management processes to help them align their internal strategies and resources to promote their own success at building capacity to pursue grants on an ongoing basis. And so I normally wouldn't spend a lot of time talking about personnel, but really the personnel of our project really is what makes this project stand out as offering colleges desirous to build capacity the kind of expertise and experiences that can speak the language of the various stakeholders in the continuum, work well with them, and help them to build their own capacity. So the PI on this project is Kevin Cooper. He's the Dean of Advanced Technology at Indian River State College in Florida. He also happens to be a PI on an ATE Regional Center for Nuclear Education and Training. And Kevin has been a leader in the ATE community for about a decade or so now. And prior to that, he has industry experience both in the corporate big time world and small startups. So he's had a lot of experience working with industry partners and leading ATE initiatives. My fellow co-PI, Rasul, he's a past president of a community college and like myself, recently retired. And he retired as the assistant for special projects across the Minnesota state system in the chancellor's office. But Rasul worked his way from being a faculty member through dean and VP through the ranks across that continuum. So he understands the situation of being a faculty member, ATE PI, and also a president who has led a college where he had faculty members and deans managing NSF funding. So he brings that sort of empathy and insights to the table. I spent my entire career as a faculty member. My second year as a full-time faculty member, I didn't know any better and submitted an NSF proposal back in the 90s when, you know, the word on the street was two-year colleges don't submit to NSF, but nobody told me that till after the fact. And somehow that first proposal got funded. And then this next proposal was an ATE proposal. That's been now 20 years ago. And it just led to a whole cascade of opportunities to provide me with the kind of insights as to what does it really take as a faculty member in a community college to lead these NSF funded endeavors. I ultimately was invited to spend a few years at NSF behind the scenes as a rotator in the Division of Undergraduate Education. So between the three of us on the PI team, we bring a variety of experiences that allow us to provide insights to these colleges, but it doesn't stop there. We've got our, the glue that holds us together, Gigi Betancourt, and our project evaluator, Ben Reed. He's the one that's really gathering a lot of this content to develop the case studies and to understand the change management. But it even goes further. We have a whole host of subject matter experts, some of whom are on this workshop call today, that again span a variety of disciplinary workforce development areas. Some are in industry, others are in the academic world, with a collective magnitude of experience that and expertise that can address nearly any situation that arises in a community college with which we're working to help them build this capacity. We've got in this cast here, there are 3 more former NSF rotators as well. So we have some good ideas of what happens once that that button is suppressed by some sponsored projects officer to submit that proposal into the digital abyss called Fastlane. The stuff that happens on the panels and beyond. We bring that level of expertise to help colleges develop competitive proposals, but also how to manage them afterward. And really, what does it take to make things within an institution synergistic and efficient to continue pursuing NSF support on an ongoing as needed basis. We do have a website that can offer you more information in case anybody's interested. It's projectviz.org. The URL's down there toward the bottom of the slide. We've got a lot of content there. Again, it's still in development. We still consider ourselves somewhat nascent in nature. But here's sort of as Frank Zappa might say, the crux of the biscuit. This is what we do to support our mentee institutions. So during a period of the year, July through December, we're recruiting institutions to apply for support from Project Vision. We're collecting and reviewing those applications. Typically, our cohort sizes are 10 mentee institutions. We're currently working with 11. Then once we've put together a cohort of mentee institutions, we work with them to put together a pre-visit package. In the ideal world, we would go to the colleges and meet with all of those stakeholders across the continuum for a couple or a few days, having meetings, really trying to understand the circumstances and processes and resources and opportunities within that college and its surface area. So in order to help us get that started, we have them complete a pre-visit package, which teases out a lot of the information that could help us put together the appropriate team of one of us PIs, subject matter expert, to develop a site visit agenda to go meet with those stakeholders that I previously mentioned. So that would all take place in the early part of the year, after which the mentee institution has been selected to participate in Project Vision. Then throughout the spring, we would do the site visit. We would provide a post-visit analysis, basically sharing with the institution the sorts of insights we gained and nuggets of what we consider to be resources and values and assets and opportunities that we gleaned through our site visit processes. And then June through September, we would really focus on ATE proposal development. Now, it's not sequestered only to those months. We've been working with them all along through the ideation and putting together the core team to prepare the proposal and even starting on putting together outlines and writing stuff. But basically that June through September is really when the focus is on the proposal. And then the goal is to submit the proposal to the ATE program in October of that year. And then we also have funds to provide the team at the college to attend the ATEPI conference, which for many is a very eye-opening, overwhelming experience in some regard to really see what's happening out there in technician education. In addition to this process I described, we also provide a $6,000 stipend to the college. We let them do what they want with it, but we encourage them that they should, you know, really give strong consideration to buying down a faculty member or faculty members load or loads to allow them time to work on the proposal, because that's another high, you know, when you do surveys, one of the higher, as typically the second highest one, is having the time to do these things, because as we know, two-year college faculty members have very busy lives with their heavy teaching loads and other demands, and no TAs to do grading or prep or anything like that. So having the time to work on proposals is really critical. So far, here are the 11 colleges we're working with. We're working with folks from Massachusetts to Hawaii. So just to give you a snapshot of that. I want to say something about change management, because this is the model. And for some folks out there that may be more, have more expertise in this, please feel free to chime in on anything that would be enlightening to the audience. But this ADKAR model stands for awareness, the A. So basically coming to grips with the fact that, you know, we need to change and embracing that, because I don't have to tell anybody here that sometimes folks are reticent to change. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I've been doing things this way for so long. I really don't think I need to change anything. So making it aware that change is going to benefit us is that first step. You know, what's working well and where can we make improvements to what we're doing? Once that change, and this is sort of a follow on, the D is desire. The desire exists to embrace the change. And again, this is where the stage at which some of those folks that are reticent or hesitant to change, you address their concerns and allay their fears, identify those institutional champions that really want to, you know, be take the mantle and move forward for that positive change. But how do you do the change? Well, it's not just easy saying yeah, I want to change. You need to understand how best to change, develop that knowledge. That's the K. You know, share information across the various stakeholders, provide professional development, envision outcomes, and really embrace other models where change has been implemented effectively. The ability, demonstrate ability to take action. Basically, take the theory that's informing the change and put it into practice, right? That's again, a lot of what happens is there's a lot of theories out there, but transforming theory to practice can be one of those obstacles to overcome. And now, once the institution has implemented some change, reinforce it. Leadership reinforces those changes adopted and implemented to help sustain them. And Tom, you have your hand up. Am I running over time? A little bit. I'm almost done here. So reinforcing those changes and then refine them. It's not, you know, change is not static. It's an iterative process. So here are our intended outcomes for the project. We have a 5-year project. We hope to collaborate with 45 colleges. We want to expand the number of 2-year colleges that pursue NSF funding on an as-needed basis. And not only ATE, ATE has an opportunity to provide that first toe in the water with NSF, but things like STEM and IUs and other programs out there, and across other divisions within the Directorate for Education and Human Resources may also be appropriate programs for some of our colleges to pursue support. We want to understand better these processes that lead to positive institutional change, and then we want to disseminate that information via these various vehicles to appropriate communities of scholars that can assist with the capacity building in under-resourced institutions. And my last page is just basically acknowledging our NSF support and to the organizers of the workshop, and especially Tom. Thank you, Tom. And I will stop for questions.
Dave, Project Vision has been such a, it's a new project, but it is also one which has huge promise for change. And we're talking about, across an institution where faculty are linked up and they're working in concert with our administration. So you're talking about breaking down those barriers. And I think that that's an important thing with building that sense of community, true community. I would encourage people who are in our audience to ask questions and enter those into the chat box. But in the interest of time, I want to say thank you, Dave, for presenting that information about Project Vision. Absolutely phenomenal. I'm going to switch gears a little bit, and we have Linnea Fletcher, Dr. Fletcher on the line, who is going to wrap our session up with presenting some information about our National Center for Biotechnology. And then realize, folks, that this whole thing is primed so that we can see different components of NSF, but not as individual silos, but how they work together to build these opportunities. And then also focus on, the idea that what we're doing is we're all working on the same team. We're all working on the same team. So Linnea, thank you for coming, and it is my pleasure to have you here.
Well, thank you, Tom. Let me share my screen. And hopefully I hit the share button. There we go. Okay. I think I have like 20 minutes. Okay, so like Tom said, actually, and I'll do this. I did work as a program officer at NSF for 2 years, essentially around the years of 2008. And now I'm running, I'm PI of Innovate Bio, which is the National Biotechnology Education Center. And we don't need to see all that down below. Let me get rid of it. There we go. And if you recognize this shot, this is of Austin, and the center is located at Austin Community College. And Austin right now is characterized as a place to move to, and all the technologies in Austin are rapidly growing. Now I'll tell you a little bit about the center. The center was funded in 2019 for $7.5 million. And that sounds like a lot of money, but it's not when you're trying to essentially help over 122 biotech programs across the nation. And we have a leadership team that represents essentially the national leadership in biotechnology. It took me over 2 years to think about who to invite to the leadership team. We work on networking industry, trade organizations, the manufacturing institutes. We have a national industry advisory board that is overseen or coordinated as a built. So it's totally run by industry for industry. So we get good feedback, and I'll mention that more later. We also are working on setting up an alumni network, because if you think how long ATE has been in the business, there's like over 30 years of alumni who are now in industry. We actually work on coordinating all the biotech programs. And like I mentioned, there are 122 at least that are part of our membership. We are an anti-center, so we divided up some of the responsibilities to hubs, which I'll talk about. We do a lot of professional development. We have a high school network that's growing. We help programs with targeted student recruitment, especially concerning equity, diversity, and inclusion. We do a lot of grant mentoring. According to the ATE program, 15 biotechnology ATEs were funded this past year, and we're hoping to increase that success rate. We focus on best practices in education, such as undergraduate research, and we mentor programs and others in how to do policy change through collaboration. This is my leadership team. So Tom is a co-PI. Jim Hewlett is a co-PI from Finger Lakes, and as you probably already know him as also, he was the lead for Curie, which is the undergraduate research initiative. Then Sandy Porter, Todd Smith, Digital World Biology. They are communications experts. Then in California, we have Baybeck, which Michael Fuller and Ying Su Lo. So they help with a lot of the high school initiatives and supply chain, which we'll talk about. The evaluation team is Kendaya and Adam. And then over here, oopsie. There we go. We have Russ Reed, who's a co-PI from Foresight Community and Technical College. And then we have Cold Spring Harbor DNA Learning Center. Dave Nicholas is the lead, and Bruce is the co-lead, co-director. Now, what are the goals of the grant? Well, it was really important to us to develop an infrastructure that quickly addresses the needs of the community. And through that aim, we have several social media outlets. One is Facebook, Twitter, of course, the website. And interestingly, a lot more happens on the Facebook page. And I'll be talking about how, as a result of the pandemic, we immediately addressed a change as brought forward by two teachers who were discussing how they were having a very hard time moving from a laboratory space to online. And within 2 weeks of hearing this, seeing this on Facebook, we did something that wasn't even part of our activities that we're supposed to do as part of the grant, was a 5-week workshop for high school teachers. And that really changed a lot of things. And then we also did a series of webinars for community college teachers. So we literally turned on a dime to meet the needs of the community. The other thing we feel very strongly about is the ATE community in biotech, and we mentor them. We mentor them from the point of when a college is interested in submitting a grant in biotechnology, in ATE, to when they get awarded, to afterwards. So we mentor them through the entire process and try to address all their needs. We also monitor and address emerging biotech industry trends, because that will affect technician trends, and we'll talk more about that. The other thing we do is that we develop a regional outreach and mentoring infrastructure to engage underserved populations. And I just want to tell all of you right now, it has become quite evident to the biotech community that even if we filled every one of our programs and any program at a 4-year school, or even doing continuing ed, we will not have enough technicians to meet the needs of industry. We have to bring in a diverse population if we're going to meet the needs of the industry. So things have to change. This is our website. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. Is that it shows who are essentially targeted audiences: students, instructors, employees. These are very important to us. We've put in buckets, essentially, all the things that we are working on. And it seems that these buckets continue to grow. You can go to the website if you'd like and see, essentially, it's very large. We did one thing that I'm very proud to say. We built on the previous biotech center, BioLink, which was very successful in building a very engaged community over 20 years. So we didn't throw anything away. We built on that community and all of the resources they had, and we incorporated it within our site, and we hope to continue their work. So essentially, if you go to our website, you'll see how large our network is. Like I mentioned, we have like 122 programs. We now are adding high school programs in biotechnology, and there are over 90. Now, the membership to Innovate Bio is free. The cost is providing information for the network. We see ourselves as essentially collecting important information about the network, their needs, and disseminating it out to others. So we're a networking agency. And for the states who don't have programs, that's why we don't have any members in those states. So now, helping the network, we help them. The number one thing biotech programs have told us they need is recruiting students. Biotech programs are expensive. They tend to be small and pricey because of equipment. This means that many colleges, even if they have biotech industry in their area, they don't want to start a program because it costs too much money. So we work with schools to show them the benefit, and we help schools recruit students. We help prepare instructors by sharing best practices through workshops. And we also work with alumni because alumni are a valuable resource. We also provide information on best practices when working with skill standards. We help them purchase equipment in terms of what is the best equipment. We give them essentially, we work with the commercial entities so they can provide information, and then programs can make choices. And the last thing is we develop leadership. And one thing that's going to be occurring in the near future is our Leadership Institute. Russ Reed and Tom Tubon are in charge of that initiative. And what's really special about it, I'll say it now, it is actually based on best practices from industry and how they prepare their leadership. Talking about the goals, one thing we do, as I mentioned, is that we work with ATE projects. And goal 2 is coordinated by Dr. Hewlett and mentoring the ATE projects. And one thing we do is that we combine education with economic development. And I'll show you what this means. So 17 programs have incubators located at their community colleges. We have found one of the best ways to educate students is to get them involved with startup companies and actually do projects for them, whether it's in an internship or part of coursework. At Osk Community College, we have the ACC Bioscience Incubator. I wrote the grant probably, it was 7 years ago. It's an Emerging Technology Fund grant to get the award to build the incubator at the community college I'm located at, ACC Bioscience Incubator. And I had to collect economic data on how my students and equipment advance product development. And that data was used to essentially write the grant and get funded. Students love to work at startup companies because they get to do everything. So another good example from a workshop that I attended last week that was put on by Finger Lakes and Dr. Hewlett is something that he's doing, and he got funding for this through the ATE program, where his group of students are working as the R&D arm of this company, Leap Foods, and they're actually using fungi for synthesis of products. So these are the kind of things that are going on at biotech companies, and then being helped by programs like Finger Lakes, ACC, programs in California. We actually make an effect on economic development. And let's talk a little bit about mentoring. So we mentor programs to write grants. We mentor programs to publish. So I'm a co-PI on the RCN UBE CC Bio Insights Community College Grant, which helps biotechnology and biology instructors to do educational research and then publish it. So one thing is we work with all these other types of mentoring. In fact, last year we had a meeting with many of the mentoring projects that are funded by ATE with the idea that they will provide the mentoring and how to write the grant, and centers and projects in a specific area like biotech will do the mentoring that are discipline specific. Because if you view a center as an umbrella organization, a center has to know what's going on concerning workforce education across the entire nation. Therefore, when someone is interested in writing an ATE, they need to understand how this can benefit or advance the knowledge of that entire community. And they need to be able to articulate that in their grant. They have a role within the entire community. So every project, including the center and even the manufacturing institutes, all have a role to advance the entire biotech community. So Tom wanted me to provide some examples about making change in policy, because this is something that I've always practiced, in that if you want anything to happen and be sustained, you have to be willing to go after policy change or paradigm shifts. So I'll just give you some examples that we're working on now. Right now, we're working on the idea of biotech programs. The courses are usually not academic courses, they're workforce courses. And in most states, they don't transfer to four-year schools, which limits the number of students that are going to be enrolled in these courses. Especially like I have a dual credit program in the state of Texas, and they all have to be academic courses. So the biotech courses in Texas are now also academic courses, and they transfer to four-year schools. So my two-year students and my high school students can use those courses as science electives. That's kind of a paradigm shift there. The other thing is we're working on the idea of scholarships. Scholarships were always dependent on grade point average. Well, to be quite honest, a grade point doesn't mean anything necessarily for how good of an employee you're going to be. There should be other parameters. So we're working to change scholarships that are to biotech programs, that they're based on more of some of the soft skills, you might say, or laboratory skills, mastery of skills, instead of just what grade you got in a class. The other thing that is important to us is getting industry to hire students based on mastery of competencies instead of four-year degrees. And we've had some success in this area, and moving away from the old-fashioned approach of using a four-year degree or even a two-year degree to define what a student actually has mastered. We're working on getting states to support colleges that have biotech programs, because when a biotech program ends at a college, it's more realistic or more practical to go after the state than necessarily that school. The state needs to provide incentives to maintain these programs within the community colleges that are located in their state. And then we're working to gain recognition for two-year biotech programs. And that's one reason we got involved with the manufacturing institutes, is because guess what? They have discovered on their own that it's really about biotech programs across the nation, and that are producing these technicians, and this is who they need to support. So if you talk to Nimble or Biomade, you will see that they support us already. And now we have them in our back pocket in terms of helping us, and they are working with us. So am I over, Tom? Okay. Well, anyway, the only other thing I wanted to mention is the anti-center. I think this is really important. No center can do the job by themselves. So now we're working with other areas to become co-centers with us, or hubs as we call it. And these are the hubs that we presently have. They're helping us with the center to meet the needs of the community. And I think that's a good place to stop right there. How's that?
Linnea, that was fabulous. And I think that there's so much more information to share with this community. And I think that this interface between community of workforce practitioners and broader impact professionals really is coming together. And I hope that this session has really highlighted some of those most important points. So I appreciate you really turning the light up for biotech programs. For everyone in the audience, realize that NSF and the world of biotech, that's the world that I thrive in too. But it is also expanded beyond that. We're talking about robotics, we're talking about maritime and steam pipe fitting and all of these technical jobs. And then the other major important point that I want to mention just very quickly, we emphasized a lot on tech and community college, but it wasn't for the fact that our traditional way of thinking about it is for community college doors to open up to high school students and that pathway. What we're seeing is a lot of older students. Our average age of our students in the community college is 29. We're seeing more students who have earned a bachelor's degree coming back to the tech and community college programs for retooling and retraining in preparation for the workforce. And so aligning this with the NSB recommendations, and we'll hear from Vic McCrary during our meeting, that there are a number of suggestions that are made. One is by leveraging what already exists, because no one wants to recreate the wheel. Two, create those partnerships. Those partnerships are critical, right? And so, you know, the partnerships, leveraging what exists in the federal portfolio of what people have done and done successfully, and continuing to innovate and continuing to support these programs in ways that we create those opportunities. So I want to hand it over to, well, first say thank you to all of our speakers and Bryanne for helping to organize a lot of this, and everyone for your attention and being a part of our afternoon. But I want to have in the last 2 minutes any closing comments that any of our panelists or our participants in our audience, if you would like to make, or you know, share your own experiences with us. And I know we're running out of time here, but 2 minutes to go, and we can wrap this one up. So I'm going to hand it over to you guys to really give us some take-home messages here.
And for those that are audio shy, if you want to throw it into the chat, I will be your reader.
Okay, I'll say it. Collaboration is everything. And collaboration and communication.
Yeah.
Find your tribe, and then, you know, make friends, figure out who's good at what, and then you know who to call on for all those gaps in your plans. Like I said earlier, it's really the best thing you can do is come to these things, listen to each other, talk to each other, and find those common strings. I would agree, Linnea. It's all about collaboration.
And for the individual practitioner, my word of advice, I'm going to pass this along because this is what, you know, I've received from probably my most valued advisor. And that is always try to work outside of your comfort zone, because that's really where a lot of stuff happens. The innovation happens when you're pushed to the wall, you think you're at your limits, change happens. So continue doing the good work, everybody. And again, I thank everyone for your participation in this session. I hope that it was enlightening for many. I know for myself, definitely it was. And I want to say thank you. And I think with that, we are at the very
Trent's got
end.
a question, so I'll stay on as long as they let us and keep answering for people. Trent, to answer your question about 4-year R2s, any 4-year institution can apply for an ATE grant as well. It's not designed to be exclusive to community college. It's just really hones in on where they excel. But you can also partner with a community college if you want to be the research arm of their practitioner and pedagogical approach changes. Things are getting loud at my house, so I'm going to mute in between. Kids are home.
Well, this is a wonderful afternoon for me. I'll also stay online in case anyone has questions. So not to break the awkward silence, I know that it's been a long couple of hours. I appreciate everyone's time and attention, and our speakers for sharing your expertise. So I'll be here if anyone has questions, and otherwise enjoy. I guess there's a short break. Is there? See you this afternoon.
I'm curious to know how many people on this call are interested in writing an ATE.
You all can use your reactions to raise your hand or clap for that.
I'll say I'm always interested in writing ATE, whether it's supplement or whether it is a grant or maybe even a center, because that is really the only way that community colleges and other entities can get the money for innovation. Money is tight nowadays. It is very, very tight. And so the NSF is generous in their pocketbook, but also visionary in their scope.
I think a key is you should always think in the terms of grants, period. So when I hear my group at my community college talk about a project that they want to do, even if the school has funding, it doesn't matter. It's better to think in the term of a grant as a building block and write it that way, because you'll do the evaluation piece with it. A lot of times people, when they have too much money, they forget that piece, and there's no cycle of iteration, as you might say, which is so necessary, whether it's a grant or not.